Ahead of the big election, there is no shortage of misinformation about voting by mail, which has been circulating online. That's why the Verify team is here, to separate what's real from what's fake. You may have seen tweets and Facebook posts like these, claiming that the United States Postal Service is putting big red locks on blue collection boxes to slow down the mail and suppress voting. So let's verify. Did the post office lock collection boxes? And is there any evidence that it was done to interfere with voting? Our source for this one is USPS. And right out of the gate, we could verify that true. A spokesperson says the agency retrofitted the front of some collection boxes with these locks. But here's the really important context that was pretty much left out of a lot of those posts, most of which center around boxes in Burbank, California. The spokesperson tells us they started using the locks back in 2016 to prevent mail theft. The locks are put on after the last collection of the day and taken off the next business day. The post office says customers can still use the box by using the opening on the back to drop letters in. But we didn't just take the Postal Service's word for it. We double-checked and found out that, yeah, this was a pretty big story back in 2016 in the San Fernando Valley. It was covered heavily by several major news outlets, which backs up the Postal Service's claim that these locks are nothing new. So while the locks are real, we could also verify that false. There is no evidence that the locks are meant to interfere in the upcoming election. With your Verify, this is Evan Kozlov.